to the way Andrew Wiggins has been playing. So it seemed like Bobby was indicating that teams out there are not totally smitten with the idea of acquiring Andrew Wiggins. And if you wanted to trade Wiggins as a Warrior team, you would probably have to attach something decent to it just to get a team to take Andrew Wiggins. And, all of us here have looked at Andrew's salary and thought, well, Andrew's number is not that high relative to many around the league. But Bobby seemed to think that his contract is a little bit prohibitive to making a trade.
Says a little high. I really wanted to follow up on that because you want to know what I found interesting with just that whole idea. So you asked him, and we asked him about Andrew and Klay Thompson. We asked about Klay. What does he say? Gosh, he's still a $25 to $30 million player. And you go, what about Wiggins? He's making 26. He goes, yeah, gosh, a little high. And I went, that's interesting. Bobby Marks indirectly saying that Klay Thompson's value around the league is higher than Andrew Wiggins. That's interesting.
It's because of two things, in my opinion.
Go
One,
ahead.
Andrew signed for 2 more with a player opt, so he's still owed $85 million.
But if you're going to sign Klay, it's going to be at least 2 years.
Right, but it won't be 85.
No.
And the other thing is something that you've talked about is what Klay brings. His number one skill is something that is not as easily duplicatable as Andrew Wiggins, and that's shooting the basketball.
Yep.
And he had a bad year shooting. He had a much better second half, but his overall numbers were down. But he still is a top 25 shooter in the association.
It's fascinating, though, because he's, 6 years older than Andrew? But you're right. You're absolutely right. Like, it goes to show you what is valued around the league.
Right.
And right now, teams will take a 2-guard that just stands there but can knock down threes all day rather than somebody who, in theory, has every skill that a basketball player can have. He can drive, he can shoot, he can defend. He's not 30 years old yet. But sometimes you have to poke him. And then there are other times where you're not even going to be sure what the hell's going on with him. And so you've got to deal with that. And Bobby's sitting there going, teams would rather pay Klay $26 million than Andrew. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know a different word to use for it.
I was surprised at the lack of a response that I got positive from Bobby. I thought he was going to say, considering the relative bargain price, I think Andrew might be attractive for some teams. But he all but said, that contract's a little rich considering what he brings.
The more I look at Andrew, the more we look at 2 years ago and go, man, it was just lightning in a bottle because you can't ask Andrew to be your 1. But you also can't ask him to be your 5. In other words, Andrew will just disappear. And that skill set does not work if you're just like, we got 4 other scoring options in front of you, and he'll be like, sweet, I'll just run next to him.
Sweet. That's the problem. He actually kind of would like to be your 5.
I'll just be right behind him. If something comes up, I'll be there. But if not, you can have your 9 points a game and 3 rebounds, and that's $26 million. Oof. But you can't have him be your 1 because the dog's not in him to do that.
Exactly.
So 2 years ago, it was the perfect scenario where they're like, we're not going to ask a lot of you, but we're going to ask some. And if you're really feeling it, man, you can just muscle up and be great. And then everybody's happy. But if you don't for a night, that's okay too. Like, who the hell's offering that?
For $26 million.
Exactly. All right. We're presented by Fremont Bank, full service banking, no compromises. React to Bobby Marks, 888-957-9570. Is it thank you contract time? Do you pick thank you or do you pick next? Let's keep taking your calls as we go into the 5 o'clock hour on Willard and Dibs. What's motorboating? Hey, what's going on? It's Willard and Dibs for Safeway. Enjoy 3 amazing deals.
When you look at assets they possibly could package at that point, how is Andrew Wiggins viewed around the league at 26.2 next year?
Every team needs a $20 to $25 million player to put in a deal if the goal is to go out and get a $35, $40 million guy. So it's more of a I don't want to say trade asset, but it's a trade component that a team could use. The value of it, as far as on the court, is probably not where it was, certainly from 2 years ago.
Now, back to Willard and Dibs on 95.7 The Game.
Bobby was interesting, man. Bobby was really interesting. By the way, get your butts back to YouTube. It got zapped, but it's back. Back.
What happened? Why did we get zapped?
It just went away.
It wasn't something I said?
It was like the Warriors season. It was here,
wow.
and then it was gone. But unlike the Warriors season,
got yanked on YouTube.
It's back.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, again, Dibs is just a wee little version of himself. There's a tiny little thing over there.
I had to put the hoodie back on. I'm cold.
What do you weigh? Like 82 pounds now?
I'm down a clean 20.
Are you really?
Yeah.
How fast did that happen?
It the first 5 to 7 was quick.
Well, 5 to 7.
Was fat.
Yeah. Well, no, it's not that.
Fat red pumpkin.
Anybody who's ever
Fat red pumpkin.
I give myself a 5 for that.
It was a good impression of yourself.
Appreciate it.
No, anybody who's ever made a change with their diet, you'll notice the first 5 is hell, I started yesterday.
Yes.
And that'll just fall off.
Boom.
But dude, 20?
Yeah.
How many days did you do 20?
It's been 4 weeks. It'll be 4 weeks tomorrow.
That's a lot. That's fast.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good program.
20 pounds a month? You'll be gone in no time.
Seriously. I'm about 8 months away from no longer existing.
That's perfect.
You know how
My
it is.
plan is working perfectly.
Couple more salads and you'll have a new partner. In first 5, like you said, 5 to 7, boom. And then it's been about half pound a day on the average, but there's been some gain 2 and you lose 1, you gain 1, you lose 3. So it's a fluctuation sensation, Mark, is what it is.
I have a half pounder every day too.
I see you eat over there.
Just get on over there to five guys or habit or In and Out or something. You want to have half pounders.
I'm looking for another 15.
Okay, 35 total.
Yeah.
Looking for 35.
And I'm already about 7 pounds away from my driver's license no longer being a lie. And that was my goal. Because my driver's license says...
What does it say?
5'8". And I'm 7 pounds away from that no longer being a lie.
Why is it a secret? Just say it. Say it.
170 is what my license says.
Okay.
And I was... I was knocking on 200's door. I've never seen 200.
No.
I got on the scale.
I have.
Well, and I don't want to, and I won't tell my wife what the numbers are. So if she's listening, sorry, Farhan, she's not listening, but she is in the car. If she's listening, now you know the numbers. But one time I stepped on the scale and it said 199.4, and I was like, I'm a fat red pumpkin. And then
that's what I am.
Fat red pumpkin.
That's
You're
about what I am.
6'2".
Right.
At least. I'm 5'8", Mark. There's a difference.
I'm told there is.
Yes. So if I get to 160.
It's only a few inches.
That's great. He's hot today. He's playing great. He brought his A game.
I've never even heard that one before.
Yeah, I'm about 176 right now. So get down to 170, break on through to the other side. I'd love to see what 160 looks like.
LFG, dude.
Yeah.
Let's go.
It's good. And you see me every day. I'm eating salad, Mark.
I don't see much of you.
You boys.
Another inch every time I post it. Yeah. Tell you what. I did see this. Work out a little shindig yesterday. A little shindig. So every time you had to walk through the kitchen to go to the restroom, you had to pass by like a little treat bar. And this is what people do. You got a potluck. Well, nobody's bringing broccoli. And if you do, by the way, you're wrong. I love you, but that's come on.
There are a couple salads. Comfort's chicken salad made an appearance.
Right, but that's people who are
place is great.
Yeah, it's great, but there's a lot of people who are like, oh crap, I forgot the potluck. Let me just grab a salad on my way in.
Yeah.
Nobody's making vegetables and bringing them in. And if you are, you're wrong.
Comforts is great.
Comforts is delicious.
You go for lunch, and by the time you get to the front of the line, it's dinner.
Exactly. But anyway, I caught you. You
gonna rat me out?
You were standing over those cinnamon sticks or whatever the hell those things were, but I didn't see you eat one.
No.
I didn't see you eat one, that's extra willpower.
Jeez, man.
There's willpower, and then there's like, I'm going to stick my face in this and still not eat it.
I did
holy hell. That was for you, Granny.
I took one tortilla
I knew what
chip.
I was doing there. Anyway, go ahead.
One tortilla chip.
Oh, well, that's fine.
And I plunged it deep into that 10-layer dip. I got about 8 of the layers.
That's good.
Popped that baby in and walked away.
You could have a
Yeah.
chip.
Yeah.
Which layer of the 7 layers did you like the best?
Probably the guac.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a big guac guy.
Guacamole.
I like the
Absolutely.
guacamole. But
All right.
anyway, thank you.
Hey, you look great.
Appreciate it.
You look great.
AbundantLifeWeightLoss.com.
I've noticed that you started positioning your camera lower.
It's not by accident. Well, because for those of you getting back on
It's
YouTube,
like all headshot
Yeah.
for 2 years.
well, when you're
Now
fat
all of a
and
sudden
bald,
you're like, whoop,
well,
take a look at my belly.
there was no good angle. Because if I shoot toward the head, you can see how bald I am. Or you shoot it low and you see how fat I am. But
too low. He went low, way low.
yeah, not now.
All right.
Hand that thing down, Grandy. Yeah, you won't.
All right, back to Wiggins.
All right.
Christ's sake. Jabron in Vallejo. What you doing, Jabron? What are you doing?
I'm driving home, man. Just driving home.
Okay.
I'm going to take a little different direction. The first thing I want to say is that, I love my Warriors. They gave us, so many wonderful memories. But they set the precedent, and they're the ones that changed the league with their championships. The way their gameplay was, they're the ones that made the league evolve to what it is now. So now we're dealing with these new teams that have these shooters that can sit there and compete exactly the way we were doing it when we were winning. And not to mention, we have these big men that can also shoot the three and be inside, so you don't know which way to guard. So my thing is that if we're going to put money into anything, I think we need to put it into therapy. First of all, we know Clay's biggest problem is he gets in his own head. And when he gets in his own head, he has horrible games. So put some money into some therapy for him and put some money into some therapy for Draymond. And then have your veterans work on training and leading your rookies because they're great and they got good quality grinders. So all I say is that's my take. I think that's what we should be putting money into. Save the team as it is. And even CP3, they got, he's a veteran, but he can put that time into the rookies. And I think that's what we should be doing.
Jabron, it's a very, very interesting point. I think you're being a little bit tongue-in-cheek with the whole idea of therapy. I'm not saying that...
Doesn't hurt against the cap.
No.
Therapy money.
Although, it's as expensive as a two-guard. But anyway... I'm not saying that they don't need therapy. I bet they do therapy. I think both of them have said they do therapy. Is it helping? I don't know. Your points are valid with regard to Clay spends probably more time in his head than really actually helps him. And Draymond obviously has a hard time keeping his emotions in check. I don't know if either of those things are truly going away. What just popped to mind, though, in listening to Jabron, was a comment that Jonathan Kuminga made. And this is both a good thing, but it also raises questions. Kuminga pointed to Chris Paul's leadership and said, Chris Paul is the one that has helped me learn how to be an NBA player, all the way down to not just stuff that you talk about on the court, where to be and how to approach the three-point line, but like my diet and how to be an adult in this league. Chris Paul did that. And I'm sitting there thinking, how many years you been in the league, Jonathan?
3.
Okay. You just got that now? Like, where the hell were these? Where was the leadership before Chris Paul arrived? And obviously, it's a question we dealt with a lot last year. Second year in the league, Jonathan Kuminga watches one of his good friends and another one of the young fellas on the team get popped in the face. And so I don't know if Steph, Clay, and Dre, think about them now without Chris Paul going forward. This might be one of the biggest questions that we could ask right now, or that the front office needs to ask itself. If Chris Paul leaves and the big three stay, are they truly able to be the leaders they need to be to usher in whatever is going to be next? Because the point that Steiny made a couple of days ago about Klay Thompson and a reduced role, like his history, his standing within the organization, is too great, in his opinion, to just sort of step aside and let Jonathan Kuminga be himself. It's an interesting point. I don't really know the answer to it, but it popped when Kuminga's like, here we are in year 3, and Chris Paul is the one who finally put me under his wing. I like, the big 3 needs to be lessened, and I don't just mean that physically.
And I don't know how you bring in any leadership at this point, somebody like Chris Paul. I mean, that was kind of fortunate that you brought in a 38-year-old who, in just 1 year here, didn't have the same track record, obviously, as a Warrior, and so he was able to come in here and just be unique and be himself and lead the way he wanted to lead. I don't know if Draymond Green has that ability now to go to the young players and really be that leader. Klay's never been that kind of guy, and Steph is too busy trying to save the franchise and put everyone on his back. So if there's a leadership void for young players, I don't know if that gets any better in this offseason. And, you know, somebody mentioned earlier on the station that this team is built with a lot of old guys and a lot of young guys and not much in between. And the in-between guys are Andrew Wiggins, likely on the block, and Kevon Looney, likely to not be brought back.
You're listening to 95.7 The Game, KGMZ FM and HD1 San Francisco, always live on the free Odyssey app, Twitch and YouTube, powered by First NorCal Credit Union. 888-957-9570 is the number. We'll take your calls throughout the 5 o'clock hour. Let's hear a little bit about what Mike Dunleavy had to say earlier today. Bobby Marks also had some interesting stuff. The foremost front office NBA expert out there for my money, and he joined us earlier in the 3 o'clock hour. We'll let you hear some of what he had to say as well. Here are some of the headliners from Mike Dunleavy. This certainly got some people's attention. How much will the financials come into play with regard to what you do this offseason?
The financials will always come into it. It's part of the puzzle. I wouldn't say we're at a point now where we're saying we got to be out of the tax or we got to be under a certain apron or anything like that. We're going to look at everything. I think if you've got a team that you feel can contend for a championship, you do what it takes financially. So we'll look at everything. We'll balance it out. And it's hard to say right now in terms of what it's going to look like and all that, because this is April. This stuff goes into June and July. But you know how Joe is with his willingness to spend and compete, that I don't think there'll be any restrictions, but we'll also be prudent. I mean, to put a team out there that can't make the playoffs, like we spent $400 million this year, I wouldn't recommend that. So we'll figure it out, but I don't think we have anything set in stone in terms of parameters we got to live by.
You know what, like the picture that pops into my head, I have no idea if this actually happened or not. But when you hear on back-to-back days Steve Kerr and Mike Dunleavy both find a microphone and go, doesn't make any sense to spend $400 million for a team that misses the playoffs. It feels like Joe Lacob was in a boardroom somewhere and threw something off of a wall and yelled at the entire staff, I ain't paying $400 million to miss the playoffs. Doesn't it feel like that? It feels to me like that happened. Because these guys immediately took it out to the public and like, yeah, so we're not going to do that anymore.
It doesn't make sense to spend $400 million and not make the playoffs, right? And maybe Joe said those exact words. It doesn't make sense to spend $400 million and not make the playoffs.
It doesn't. It doesn't.
And throw one of those old telephones off the wall, rip it out of the socket, and throw it into the wall.
I mean, Joe is not, like you've heard people say it, he's not an easy man to work for. Joe is Joe.
And watch him in the game in Sacramento, and Grandy wanted to see Joe Lacob at that game, and there were a couple camera shots, and he did not look very happy. He did not look pleased with the proceedings.
Yeah, how could he?
Yeah.
$400 million. You don't even make the playoffs. Like, I get the intricacies of how this went down. 10 teams with 46 wins or more. Very, very odd. And so we understand that. And the Draymond suspension and all the things that go into whatever the Warriors record is. However, there's another way to say it that I just can't get over. Knowing what we know about the NBA where 16 teams make the playoffs. $400 million, 4 Hall of Famers, and they didn't even make the playoffs.
Right.
Eesh. That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it's
crazy.
It's beyond crazy. And, that's a commitment from Joe Lacob that we've all grown to accept and appreciate, but we shouldn't grow to accept it, or expect it rather, because it's not fair to think that that's the way he's going to go about business each and every year. So he rolls the dice and he goes way over the tax, $400 million in salary and penalty, and you are a 10 seed. So you're going to wake up and just do that again? I don't think so.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. And that's why I think that you're starting to see the tiers of what could happen here. I definitely think that, and you've heard Mike Dunleavy mention this, Joe is Joe. So Joe will be willing to do whatever if it means a potential winner. So if that big name is available and the Warriors can get in the conversation, yes, I remain optimistic, and I think that is still in play. But if short of that, sure, they want Clay back, but that is going to mean under the apron. Under the apron, and what could also trickle down is just a completely different focus from the team in terms of what they're prioritizing. I could see a Warrior team that comes back next year where they openly speak about, look, we're going to start prioritizing our younger players a little bit more. Like, I think that you could hear a different speech pattern from the Warriors next year. It's never been okay in Steph Curry's career once he became who he is. It's never been okay to talk about anything except for championship aspirations. You could see the Warriors come back next year and have a very different sound to their press conferences.
Right, and I think that's out of necessity. And these players, they earned their minutes this year, but they also got their minutes out of necessity. Draymond Green missed a couple of dozen games, and so you had to play somebody. And so Kuminga got more minutes than maybe he otherwise would have. And TJD stepped in because Kevon Looney became ineffective and Dario Saric became unplayable almost overnight. He stopped shooting, he stopped scoring, so you need a big. And so TJD, you get minutes. And Pods earned his minutes in camp. He came in with a swagger and a confidence, and he was able to go out there and play more than anybody would have thought. Moses Moody's the one guy who probably didn't get the minutes that he would have earned or did earn, and that becomes an interesting question into the offseason.
Well, I do think the Moody thing is interesting, and I do think this. One of two things is going to happen. He's either going to finally get the opportunity that a lot of people have been wanting him to get next year, or he's not going to be on the team at all.
Right.
I do not foresee a possibility of Moody being on the team and being yanked in and out of the lineup again, because they're either going to be a team that prioritizes their younger players, or they're going to be a team that traded Moses Moody, because I do think that the league likes him. The league likes him. He is an asset. So that is someone who very well could be attached to Andrew Wiggins in a deal.
Yeah, and you look at this year, so he played in 66 games, and that was only because he had a handful of DNPs. He averaged 8 a night. He's a guy who can rebound and defend a little bit, shoot the three a little bit. He's a solid rotational player for anybody, and he's super affordable. Next year, I think he's making $5 and change million, and after, well, he's actually eligible for an extension now.
Eligible, but
he's not getting what Kuminga's going to get.
It's a qualifying offer kind of a situation. Here's what Dunleavy said about Moody.
Yeah, I mean, I think the good and bad of the situation with Moses is first, he's improved. He's gotten a lot better. And on top of it, I think any issues with him playing, frankly, as a result of our depth, which is also a good thing. But at the end, you're right. He hasn't probably played as much as we'd like, and there hasn't been a clear enough pass. So that'll be something we'll look at. I think it's really important coming into year 4 for him that there is reasonable playing time available for him where he can impact our team and be out there and continue to improve. And I think that's a fair thing.
Yep. Reasonable playing time for him on the Warriors or for someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I foresee next year for him.
And I think, and he addressed this today, Mike Dunleavy, talking about how there were maybe too many players to have the minutes go around, but the other risk of that is, okay, so now you get just a 9-man rotation that you're fully committed to, and you don't have much else on your roster. If you get somebody hurt, you're kind of screwed.
Yep.
So this year you had a roster where you had really 12 guys who you were willing to and open to playing. And then sometimes you had guys hurt. But even when you had everybody healthy, there was an issue because there weren't enough minutes to go around, and Moses too often was on the outside of that.
The one other question that I know people wanted to get to, Dunleavy, right away is the Klay Thompson question. Here's what Mike said on that one.
No, I think it's a mutual feeling. I mean, the guy's been here a long time. He means so much to the organization. We really, really value him. And so there's nothing that would make me think that he wants to go somewhere else or we don't want him back. And for that reason, I'm hopeful we can make it happen. But, it's a deal. Both sides got to be good with it. And we'll work through that. But I think, hopeful, I'm optimistic I am about it.
Hopeful, optimistic. It's a deal. Both sides have to be good with it.
Right.
He added this too. This is partially about Klay. How realistic is it to talk championship still around the big three?
Well, considering they won 4 before, I would say it's well within the realm of reasonability. But we got to, certainly we want Klay back first and foremost. I expressed that to him yesterday. I think our players have expressed that, our coaches, front office, ownership. Look, everybody wants Klay back. He's still a really good player. And I think we have enough good players in our system. We have enough assets to acquire good players, and we have the ability to keep getting better. So given that, as long as those guys are still really good, I think we can contend and compete, but we just unequivocally have to improve.
There it is. That's some of the key stuff, and we've got more that we'll throw in throughout the hour. Mike Dunleavy with his exit interview, and he might be, quite frankly, the most important one of them all. It's fun to hear what Draymond has to say. Klay can take veiled shots at slates. And Steve Kerr can come on with us and be really interesting, which I think he was. And Mike Dunleavy's not doing this by himself, but we are quickly, and I think we're already there. Our brains are on transactions.
Right.
Our brains are on transactions, and Mike Dunleavy's the transaction guy.
But you can't really get into the transaction portion of the show for a long time. But, all of us, now that the season's over, you start to think about what's next and how do you make this thing better. And Klay Thompson is at the top of the list because if you want to bring Klay back, there's a number that works for the team that would allow them to maybe get below the tax, which would also let you have your mid-level exception available again, which I believe is $12.9 million roughly. So if that's available, if Chris Paul goes and Klay, and I'm borrowing from somebody on Twitter at Fake Logic, who broke all this down.
That's where I get all my news too.
Well, it's
at Fake Logic.
It's a great chart with colorful Excel spreadsheet boxes, and so I'm looking at it, and he says, he or she, they say there's a relatively quote unquote easy path to get the Warriors out of the tax and utilize the mid-level.
Okay,
and all it will take is, Chris Paul goes,
getting rid of all their players.
Klay signs for $19 million.
Oh, that's not relatively easy at all.
Well, that's the quote-unquote relatively. Re-sign Klay to $19 million or less.
End of story. Sorry. He's not going to do that.
And then you'd have GP2 opt out, and he signs back in for 3 and 16, something that I threw out as that's an actual possibility. Instead of him opting in for 9, he opts out and he signs for 3 and 16.
All right, I'll buy that as
that
possible.
That way you stretch the money.
Yeah.
So instead of 9 and bye-bye, he gets 16 and he gets to stay. And that would get you below the tax. That would allow you to use the mid-level, which is 12.9 roughly.
One of those things is completely, obviously, under your control. Another one is...
Not really. What, the GP2?
No, the Chris Paul.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, one of them is totally under your control. One of them is potentially viable. And one of them is a
super long shot.
Space cadet walking into this room within the next 3 seconds.
I think it's more likely than that, but it's highly unlikely.
Klay Thompson's going to say no to $24 million at the beginning of the year, and that prideful ego is going to play 77 games and average 18 points a game and tell the world in his exit interview how freaking impressive that is that happened. And he's going to come back after that and take $5 million per year less when Bobby Marks is telling you that the open market would offer him between 25 and 30. I find that to be absolutely unbelievable.
It's a long shot. I give it to you.
I think it's a longer shot than that.
It's a pretty long shot.
I think it's not happening.
Well, and it comes down to whether or not Clay would want to be here. I'm not saying that this is the route the Warriors would take. I'm just borrowing from @Fake Logic.
Yeah, you could just, if you want to do it that way, just let him walk. That'll get you underneath.
For sure. But then you're going to have to replace him with whom? And if you want to talk about the free agents that are out there and you want to find a free agent who will come here for $19 million, you're not talking about a player as good as Klay Thompson. That's for sure.
I don't know.
You're just not. And I looked at the free agent tracker and, the names that are out there, a guy who's only making 18, a guy who you'd love to have.
Who? Lauri Markkanen.
Former Warrior.
Former Warrior who's making 18, who can shoot.
Oh, yeah, he's got a great lefty stroke.
A great lefty stroke.
Yeah.
Troy Murphy.
D'Angelo Russell.
Oh, God.
I had to give you a free $1 there.
Don't you dare. Don't you dare.
Thank you. Markelle Fultz is out there for that price point.
I don't know what happened to D'Angelo. He became my new Chris Paul this year.
You really don't like him.
I can't even watch him.
Yeah.
Just like, oh, God.
Teach me how to Dougie. Doug McDermott making 13.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's no player out there who you could get for $19 million who would be as good as Klay Thompson.
Right, but that's, of course, you're not wrong, but there are also circumstances that go with that statement. I mean, you're factoring in age.
Yeah.
You're factoring in role. You know what I mean? For me, that's the difficulty with Klay Thompson is the role. How much is on his shoulders? How much is on all of their shoulders? I don't even mean that as anything disrespectful to them because, first of all, age is not disrespectful. It's just life. It's fact. But secondly, I think this is what they need. If these three guys still have championship aspirations, they should be knocking down Joe Lacob's door to say we need to do less, not more. Not I want to average my numbers and all that. That stuff's over, dude. Yeah. You guys have all made your $1 billion.
But you can't get a player to come in and be better than you so that you can do less. You just don't have that room.
You need more than one player.
Yeah.
It needs to be Clay and, not Clay or. Let's go to Jose in Mountain View on Willard and Dibbs. Hi, Jose. What are you doing?
I'm just driving. You know how that goes, but...
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Anyways, but hey, thanks for taking my call. Look,
sure.
I'm ready. Like you said before, it was pointed out, I don't think Clay is coming back because the way he sounded in the exit interview, he's like, hey, I've done a lot. I've played a lot. I'm doing well. And what I said about, nixing that offer that you first offered me, if you're coming anywhere near that, again, I'm out of here. I see him as a New York Knick, but here's the thing. If he walks and we save money and Chris Paul takes off, then that's your perfect excuse to be able to deal Draymond. And then you can start over from scratch. There's no possibility of bringing in pieces to help the team win a championship like they did with Durant. There's just no way. It doesn't work out that way. They're financially strapped. So let's accept it and move on because $400 million, if I'm the owner, that really doesn't make any sense, and that's a bad investment.
Right, but what you're laying out, Jose, you got to understand, I totally get your emotional sentiment, but what you're laying out, let's actually go there for a second and see how that feels for all of the key players and pieces within the Warrior organization. You mentioned the owner. If I'm the owner, I don't want to spend $400 million on that. You're right. Fine. How about $300 million and a half-empty arena? Now how we doing? See, and that's the issue.
Well, it's a no-win situation either way, though. That's the thing, right?
Well,
you're not going to do well either way.
No, I don't think it's a thing for Joe. He is very clearly and publicly stated that he doesn't want to do that. We are not bottoming out ever. That now I don't know if he can do it, but that's his goal. So I understand where you're coming from, but there are a few people who hate your idea. One of them is Joe Lacob, and another one is Steph Curry. He hates your idea of let Clay walk, trade Draymond. Let's get rid of Chris Paul, and let's just have a bunch of 21-year-olds running around with Steph Curry. I think you know what I mean. I get where you're coming from, but those key pieces within the organization do not like that idea. It's not a viable entertainment option, and I do think that they again, I'll remind people, 46-36 is not Portland. You're not Utah. You're not Detroit. And I do think a lot of Warrior fans are looking at this right now. It's like, well, you got two options. You could stink or you could stink. And the Warriors are like, we don't stink. I understand it's not good enough. It's got to be better. But what they were this year was something well north of a joke. And that matters.
Yes.
That matters in the conversation of what to do next.
Especially when you're doing entertainment. And that's what this is at the very essence of it. And that's why I do think that they're going to try to bring back Clay, because the box office of having Steph, Clay, and Dre, heck, what did we see today on that day where it was 11, 30, 23, and all three of their numbers? They did a whole thing for Clay and Steph and Draymond and their numbers that happened to fall on the same date as their numbers. And so there's box office value to bringing him back beyond the winning and losing. I think that you are right in the middle between we stink and we're a championship contender. I think you're equidistant from the two different ends of the spectrum.
Maybe.
You might be further from stinking because there's some teams that are really, really bad.
Like they don't stink. They're just, but yeah, I'll buy what you're saying.
I look at how they were against the really good teams and they weren't good, and it's for a reason. It's not a small sample, and the good teams in your conference, they cuffed you around for a reason. They're younger than you, faster than you, deeper than you, and they're better than you.
Mike Dunleavy was asked how close he thinks they are to the top teams in the West. You want to hear how he answered it?
I would love to hear that, Mark Randy.
Here he is.
For me, we're closer to the top than we are the bottom, even though we finished 10th in the standings. That's kind of the way I see it. But, that can change. Next year will be tough. The teams that didn't make the playoffs this year, you're looking at the outside end with Houston, Memphis, San Antonio. I don't see a way for those teams to get worse. They're only going to get better. So this is a tough conference, and this is why we got to improve. We got to get a lot better too.
I agree with everything he's saying. You know what I mean? Like, I think just even if you're talking about conceptually or emotionally, based on what you're watching, they're closer to the top than the bottom. When the way you phrased it, are they closer to a championship versus stinking? Yeah, they're not close to a championship, so maybe that's some sort of equidistant thing.
Yeah.
But look, this is the Warriors' philosophy, and I buy in. You don't have to, and I understand if you don't. But this is the Warriors' philosophy, is we're not just going to give up, start over, and accept a period of time of total junk. We are not going to do that. We are going to try at every single turn, especially if for no other reason, to respect number 30. We are doing that, period. All other opinions, please leave the house.
Parentheses, for now.
Yes, correct.
For now.
But now is where we are.
Now that's where our feet are. We're keeping our feet in now.
Spaceballs.
Completely.
We are here now.
And in 2 years, and it's interesting the thought about Steph getting a contract extension. It could happen this offseason. It may happen next offseason. It may not happen at all. If in 2 years Steph decides he doesn't want to play for the Warriors anymore, maybe he doesn't want to play basketball anymore. Maybe he wants to go out and be a volleyball dad, because apparently that's how he's spending his time this April, because he's not playing basketball. Yeah. So if he gets to that point, then we'll have a discussion with Joe Lacob about how much time he wants to spend on the bottom, because you'll be headed that way. The Spurs, always a great example. This is the 5th consecutive year that they won fewer than 34 games, 5 straight years, not in the playoffs.
I'm out.
They had to go that direction.
They had to.
Ginobili, Parker, Duncan, retired. Kawhi took his talents to Canada after a 71-game absence, after a self-inflicted sabbatical, and
opinion. Anyway, go ahead.
My opinion. Yeah, he shut it down. Neuropathy. It's a real thing.
Well, so is people not knowing what's going on in other people's bodies. But
exactly.
Go ahead.
So he chose to not play, and so San Antonio made their choice, which was, we're going to have to tank it up for a while and try to bounce back. And they're 5 years into it, and they're not back.
No, but they've got Wembanyama, and I think that most people would make that sort of a trade, or at least feel like that's headed in a positive direction. But yes, I sit here today surprised at 46-36 how many of you are ready to give up. That surprises me. I think the myopic Warrior fan is like, big three, we could still do it, guys. That's myopic. I'm not myopic. I want them to go into the offseason and try to get better. It is surprising to me how many people we have talked to today who are like, yeah, so let's just blow off the next 5 years and see what happens. That feels like an emotional response to me. I get the frustration and the anger at what has taken place, and it's intricate. There's a number of reasons for it. Draymond's attitude, or just time. We've all been together now for a long time, watching the same characters, and it wears on you a little bit. So I understand that. But at 46 and 36, with 2 more years on the contract of Steph Curry, I'm very surprised how many of you are like, look, that's a wrap. Let's leave. Let's go home and find people who aren't even driving yet to be on this team here in a couple of years. What? Is that where some of you are? You're getting way ahead of yourselves.
Right.
It's also April 18th. Hang out for a second. Let's see who becomes available, and let's see what the Warriors can do. If it doesn't work out in the offseason, you've always got the option to be just blow it up. Let's play a bunch of 21-year-olds. You don't need to plan to do that. You can show up at training camp and just be like, Moody, you're our leading scorer. Go.
You're not doing that, though, and that's the whole idea of blowing it up can't happen when you've got Steph with 2 more years and Draymond, whatever Clay's status will be, notwithstanding. That's not how you go about this. And we've talked about the idea some people want to trade Steph Curry. You can't get enough back at this point, especially until you get past June 30th. So you're not getting $55 million worth of players back. So
I don't know why.
You're going to get to a point when Steph is gone, Draymond's gone, and all these cats are gone. And maybe at that point, you go full or partial San Antonio. And if you look at their team this year, the ages of the players who they played, 23, 20, 20, 24, 24, 26, and 20.
And go ahead with the number of wins.
20.
Fits right in.
Right in there.
Fits right
22.
in. 22.
Apologies.
Yeah.
But yeah.
What's up, Grandy?
Oh, nothing.
Oh, well, you pulled the microphone to your face.
I was going to recommend a caller to go to. Whenever you wanted to go to a call next.
I was gonna go to, well, you tell me. Just whisper a number so we don't offend anybody.
Number 2.
Okay, that's where I was going to go.
Number 2.
Oh, we matched. Let's
2 marks.
Let's go to RC and Napa.
Show.
Hey, RC, what are you doing?
Willie and the newly minted Dan Dibley.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you for making it.
I love the Warriors, but nothing compares to the greatness of the National Football League. Case in point, these guys make a fraction of the money, but when they're sniffing the Super Bowl, they reduce their salary, defer their salary, delay their salary. All sorts of things happen for their opportunity to get into the Super Bowl. When you look at the Warriors, does the NBA prevent people from changing their salary?
Yes.
Because...
Yes.
Okay. That was all I needed to know.
Yeah.
So
So you're dealing with RC, you're dealing with, and you'll hear this whenever you talk about baseball or basketball contracts, they are fully guaranteed. Football contracts are not. So they are movable. They can evolve a little bit. And do know that those guys aren't like, I get that they're, giving up having the cash in hand and therefore the interest and whatever you can do with it. But the football players are not like they're not taking a cut. They're just restructuring the money.
I get it, but and I understand the fully guarantee, but is there something that says if Steph Curry doesn't want to make $61 or $58 million and he says, look, I don't want that deal anymore, I would think it would be not constitutional to deny somebody the right to reduce their salary. And where I was going with it, and again, I think you're probably got the answer already, is Steph and these people say they want to win, and I know they're super competitive, but if they did, I would come back at much lower salaries and sign some of these top-end free agents and then look at the NBA and and say, I told you we wanted to win. Steph's already changed basketball. He might as well change what people are being paid by being magnanimous and saying, I don't need this type of money because I'm already worth hundreds of millions.
So, RC,
thanks, RC. He's not allowed to do that.
Not only is he not allowed to do that, but what RC is saying, like, he could Tom Brady it. In other words, is when this contract is up, or let's pretend it was up right now, does Steph have the ability to be like, just sign me for 2 years and $30 million? Yes, he absolutely has that ability. Here are a number of the reasons why he would not do that, and where you're dabbling a little bit into what becomes a very sensitive subject, not just for players, but quite frankly, all employees all over the place. You've got a players' union. And if the greatest players in the game start taking half of what they're worth, then owners immediately have the ability to do that to all the players and start asking for everybody to take half of what they're worth. So there is tremendous pressure from the players' union to not do something like that. And secondarily, anytime you would suggest that, if Steph were sitting right here and you suggested that to him, he would absolutely, rightfully look back at you and say, why should I do that instead of my billionaire owner?
Yeah.
Because you can go into the luxury tax. Yes, you can. Billionaire. What did Joe Lacob pay for the Warriors?
He paid, I think, $450 million.
And it's worth now?
Or maybe less than that.
What's it worth now?
$451 million, Mark.
And what's it worth now?
$6 billion.
Keep going.
$7 billion.
Number one valued team in sports, I think, right? Didn't the Forbes thing just come out? Yes, it is every bit of $6 or $7 billion.
He paid about $450 for it.
There you go.
And he's almost 20x.
So, like, RC, you're not wrong. However, I would argue that every employee has every right to be like, why me? Why do I have to be the one? I'm out here sweating, and you're going to put it on me?
Yeah.
To open up the salary for everybody else on the team? Why don't you pay for it, billionaire?
From Forbes back in September, the Dallas Cowboys, most valuable, Yankees, second most valuable, Warriors, third most valuable.
But most valuable NBA.
Correct.
And what's the number?
$7 billion.
$7 billion.
As I thought, yeah.
$7 billion. So just in the time since he's purchased this thing, it has gone up $6.5 billion.
Correct, yeah.
And you want Curry to take $20 million less. He's absolutely right to be like, no.
He doesn't have to. And you would never ask him to do that.
Of course not.
You would hope that maybe he would do that on his own. And that's what I said to Bobby Marks, and he laughed at me about LeBron James. Might LeBron think about, taking less and taking the vet min? And but it's laughable, and we can all make judgments based on how much money Steph has and what he's made, et cetera, but he is a premier asset in this sport, and so why not make premier money? Now, to RC's question, GP2, who has an option for $9.1 million this upcoming year, he can agree to rip that up in lieu of a new contract, but that new contract would also be guaranteed money and ironclad until the final year, which could be a player option and can be maneuvered.
Yeah, like I'd be much quicker to say this in response. I don't think this is offensive at all that the Warriors openly talk about how expensive this roster is. It's not offensive. They've been amazing. They have spent every dollar that they could or should spend. But please do not allow all of these comments, such as this from Mike Dunleavy, when he talks about the financials. Listen to this again.
The financials will always come into it. It's part of the puzzle. I wouldn't say we're at a point now where we're saying we got to be out of the tax or we got to be under a certain apron or anything like that. We're going to look at everything. I think if you've got a team that you feel can contend for a championship, you do what it takes financially. So we'll look at everything. We'll balance it out. And it's hard to say right now in terms of what it's going to look like and all that, because this is April. This stuff goes into June and July. But you know how Joe is with his willingness to spend and compete. That I don't think there'll be any restrictions, but we'll also be prudent. I mean, to put a team out there that can't make the playoffs, like we spent $400 million this year, I wouldn't recommend that. So we'll figure it out, but I don't think we have anything set in stone in terms of parameters we got to live by.
No, you did not spend $400 million this year. Because how much did you make? You didn't spend $400 million.
Well, you spent it. It's not
Right.
what your total cost was.
Right, you spent it.
You didn't make as much money as you normally do because you had no playoff games.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure.
Are you sure?
Well, I don't have their books in front of me, Mark.
Well, that's the point. The point is there's revenue, A, that is attached to this. And secondly, I'd look at it like, and there's probably plenty of you listening where this is the case. Do any of you own rental property? There are probably plenty of you who, whatever you pay for owning that house on a monthly basis, let's say you have to pay $4,000 a month on your payment for owning that house, and then you rent it out for $4,000 a month, and you are basically operating at a net even. You make no money during that 12 months. Why is that still a smart investment? Because you hold on to that sucker for 20 years and make $0, and the cost of that real estate went from $1 million to $7 million. And that's exactly what's happening with the Warriors. I don't know what their intake revenue is for games played on an annual basis. They love to tell you that we're operating at a loss. We spent $400 million and we only took in $350. Okay, so you lost $50 million on that proposition, and your team went up $6.5 billion in the last decade plus. So please, I'm not saying that they're saying anything wrong, but don't take it to play a violin and act like the Warriors are doing charity work for everybody.
No violins.
They're doing fine.
Yeah, but it's just not prudent business to continue to shell out that much capital for a product that is not measuring up.
It isn't this year, but I'd argue the fact that they've spent that investment in years past and have achieved what they've achieved is the reason that their franchise is worth $7 billion instead of $4 billion. So,
right, but do you want to keep shoveling good money after bad? That becomes the calculus when you did it this year because you thought maybe you had a chance to do something special and you didn't. Does that mean you shovel another $400 after it when it's going to be more good money after bad because your team is probably still not good enough to win a championship? So you go out and spend another $400 million based on a dream and a premise? Or do you become a little bit more prudent with your money?
Yeah. No, I get it. I get it. I just don't want anybody feeling bad for the Warriors because, these poor things spent $400 million. They're fine.
Yeah.
They're fine.
They're going to make it.
Well, again,
Chase Center is going to continue to be open. The lights will remain on.
The premise was RC's call that maybe Steph should take less money. And I would argue, no, Joe should keep spending more money. Just for me. That's what I would argue is the first. If you really want everybody to afford everything, that's the first place I would look. Yes, Joe, just keep spending because you're the one who has the most. And you're the boss. Larry in Los Angeles. Hey, Larry, thanks for calling. You're on with Willard and Dibs.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to kind of repeat what I feel by listening to you guys and every other podcast for the last 2 months. And what I got at it, there's only 4 people that the Warriors want to keep. They want to keep the top 3, big 3, and Trace Jackson Davis. Everyone else, they could get rid of tomorrow and they don't care. But what they want to do at that July, they can take the hit. One benchmark player like Ron or Paul George, someone, if they're available, want to get it. And the last thing I want to say is I saw a YouTube video of the 2014-15.
Yeah, this phone's not working for us, and unfortunately, neither is your point. I don't know what podcast that you're listening to, but for you to say that they want to keep Trace Jackson Davis over Jonathan Kuminga, you got to turn that podcast off now, man. Wherever you find your podcast, stop listening to that one. Because that like,
Podcaski.
That's the only one we haven't heard.
Yeah, thank you.
Pretty good.
I just trying to break it up, but
I mean, yeah.
I'll take a 2 for that.
I don't know how much of I don't know how much of a response that even calls for.
Let's keep it moving. Let's get one more in before we get to the
let's go to Super D.
I feel good about Podcaski. I liked it. Felt good coming out.
Soda Podcaski. Let's go to Super D in the city. Hey, Super D, what are you doing?
Hey, what up? What up? Man, I'm over here. Butt hurt from the L's, man. But,
yep.
Hey, there's a lot good what's going on with the Warriors right now. There's a lot bad. So, and everybody calling in, there's a lot of right, and people are right about a lot of things. And the first thing that's wrong with the Golden State Warriors is the roster. You have to look back at what made this dynasty special. They drafted Steph Curry. They drafted Draymond Green. They drafted Klay Thompson. And then they traded Monte Ellis for Andrew Bogut, which was the biggest trade they could have ever done. Draymond is no longer left on the island to play dirty and guard the league's biggest, best talent. We need a center. We need a center with a high IQ who can set screens, picks, and pass, and can play dirty and get in the other guy under the big guy's skin, the trees in the league, get under their skin and get them ejected. Draymond can't be out there. Second of all, the roster's weak. We got a weak bench. We have Sean Livingston, Andrew Iguodala coming off the bench, Leandro Barbosa. Kevin Durant came here to take a pay cut to win a championship. Free agents, stars don't want to come to Golden State and win championships anymore. That was an intricate part of the recipe of the dynasty that we had. The big three, Steph, Klay, and Draymond, they should go out and start fishing for free agents to take pay cuts and come here to win championships.
Yeah, but Super D, it's just like, I love what you're saying, except for the whole part about it's just not realistic. Like, you get David West on a veteran minimum because he knew that team was going to be in the finals. Steph, Klay, and Dre can't go out and make that phone call anymore. Hey, come join us. We might move from the 10 seed up to the 8. Like, nobody's going to do that. Like, veteran minimum is, I'm on the way out the door. I got one more year, maybe 2. I want a shot at a ring. If that's you, you're like, it's unfortunate. You're not coming to Golden State. Those days have gone. This day's almost gone for us, but not yet. Okay, so if you're on hold, stay right there. We got more time for your calls. Heading for 6 o'clock in the best of the game with Grandy right now. Willard and Dibs.
Hit that S again.
Tune into You Don't Know Jack this Friday on The Morning Roast with Bonte and Shasky. Brought to you by Jack's Restaurant and Bar in Pleasant Hill, San Bruno.
Now, back to Willard and Dibs on 95.7 The Game.
I mean, sing it, y'all.
0 for 10 in the 9-10 playing game.
You went falsetto a little early
Sorry,
there.
I did.
But it is. It's so hard.
Bring it home, Mark.
To say goodbye.
Oh, boy.
To yesterday.
And the big three. Look at you.
Yeah, listen. This song was bouncing around in my head as I listened to Mike Dunleavy earlier today. I don't know that this is the way that it's going to go, but that song is perfect for what we're talking about, which is thank you contracts. And then Mike Dunleavy saying that there's never a wrong time to make the right decision. And it's, highly likely that Draymond will be back, but I could be wrong. I mean, you put all of this into a bucket, if you understand even a little bit, and that's all I'd say about us, a little bit about the financial structure of what's in play and what the Warriors can do, that's what they're dealing with. That's what you're dealing with. You got to figure out the right thing to do, the right time to do it, and the emotional fallout from it. And it is very, very hard, more so than at any other time in the history of this organization, to say goodbye to yesterday. But we've known for a while that that day is coming, and you never really know when you're here. So the only thing we can say right now is we might be here.
Yeah, it's a maybe, and it depends on a number of factors. And, part of it, I think, is the Steph Curry factor as well, because if he really wants to play with Clay and he really wants Draymond to still be around, I can't imagine the organization doesn't do everything they can to make sure that is something that happens, because Steph is the Warrior culture and he's here for 2 more years, and you don't want to see him get through next year and or the year after and decide, I didn't like the way they did Clay. They did Clay kind of dirty. And man, they traded Draymond, even though I wanted to play with Draymond. And so Steph gets to the end of his 2-year contract that's remaining, and he decides, you know what? I'm going to go somewhere else too. That's the last thing you want.
Absolutely.
You don't want to piss off the chef.
No. And I don't think they will. And that's the point. That's why I'm all in on just sorry, Yoda, there is a try. Try to do well next year. Try to be good. Try to make a trade. Try. Don't give up. Don't do this whole I'm mad because they got embarrassed in Sacramento, and so blow it up, make everybody go away, punish them, whatever. Start calling people cooked and old and just why? No, they were not a horrible basketball team. You got to see if you can get back on the horse. Yes, change is needed. Absolutely. But what are those changes? Not just emotional house cleaning. You got to be smarter about that. And there is a way potentially to do this.
Right. You have to be smart, but you also have to be somewhat frugal, I think, unless Joe Lacob says, the heck with it. Let's bring everybody back and let's just spend and let's get crazy in the second apron.
That's not
and I don't think he's going to do that. So there's a certain amount of frugality that's going to be in play. And there's a number, I'm sure, that they are looking at for Clay that is their ceiling. And if Clay can get more elsewhere and he wants to get more elsewhere, then that might be the way that this all comes apart.
Let's go to Bob and Marin. We got a few minutes left to hang out with our peeps. Hey, Bob, what's going on?
Hey, guys. Thanks for letting me be on the air with you guys. I just wanted to say just one observation. I think the guys, they're not old, but they are older. And I always make this point on this radio station every single time I have a conversation with anybody about dynasties. I think once the dynasty loses their ace or the ace is on the older side, you need to find another ace. I mean, it happened with Jordan. It happened with Tim Duncan. It happened with Kobe. And now it's the same case with Steph Curry, and we don't have an ace. The Warriors don't have an ace. I think the Lakers were lucky on the second time around. Kobe was such a great talent that he was able to do what he did with Pau Gasol. And also, the Spurs were lucky with having Kawhi on their side. And Kawhi has 2 championships. So the Warriors don't have an ace. What I'm really excited about is to see where basketball is going to go next, because I feel like the Oklahoma City Thunder, that team is the team to watch out for the next 10 years. I think that's the team that's going to kind of set the pace on how basketball is going to be played, and that's who Warriors need to become. And how they get there is going to be up to this front office. I don't think players taking less money is going to solve this problem. I think they have to dig deep and understand who it is that they're going to get who's going to be their ace. Jonathan Kuminga is not the answer. There's somebody out there that they need to find and say, hey, you take the reins.
Well, Bob, this is an interesting call, and there's a lot in there. The Oklahoma City thing, you do have to remember that what they started doing was stockpiling picks at an unbelievable rate for a long period of time of crap basketball. So you have to be willing to sign up for that if you want to do it that way. And even if you do it that way, there's no guarantee that you're going to strike gold in the way that it looks like the Thunder might have. Let's not crown them yet just because they've got a 1 seed in a regular season. Good team, good young players. I get it. The one thing I'll disagree with you on, Bob, is when you said that the Warriors don't have an ace. Like you said, the Lakers were lucky to have a talent like Kobe Bryant who was able to do it again with Pau Gasol. Let me stop you right there.
Yeah.
He had Pau Gasol. I covered that team when Pau wasn't there. Stinky. Terrible. Awful. Shaq left, and Kobe couldn't do it by himself. And I still think that Steph Curry is very much in that mold where of course, he's not good enough to do it by himself, although largely no one is. I would love to see, for me, a bigger issue is not that the Warriors no longer have a 1. It's that they very, very clearly don't have a 2. And so to use your comp, if Pau Gasol came walking through that door in his prime, we would have action. Yeah. I believe.
Well, depends on just how good Steph Curry can be with another player alongside him, because this year he looked like he had gotten tired and looked like he was starting to have his skills diminish. And was that just a blip because he had to do too much this year? Or is that the player that Steph's going to be going forward now that he's turned 36? We do have to remember that.
Yeah.
Steph as a 1, as a true 1 on a winning team, those days might be over.
They might be, yeah.
And absolutely. We won't know until we get to the fall and see how he comes out of the Olympics.
But I think the gap of like Steph Curry to the 1 and all the other Warriors to the 2, the other Warriors to the 2 is a larger gap.
Much bigger gap.
Let's squeeze in one more. Arnell in Fremont. Hey, Arnell, what's up?
What's up, guys? The question that was sitting with me throughout this whole afternoon has been, what if tomorrow Steph Curry lets Joe Lacob know, I think these are going to be my last 2 years? How does that change this whole conversation, knowing that there is an end? That's all. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Arnell.
All right, Arnell.
I don't know that it changes it at all.
Not this year.
Well, but yeah, right, because I think that the Warriors are probably looking at it that way, at least contractually, in terms of what their obligations are, in terms of what they're trying to do. I don't think they're thinking about Steph Curry in 3 years. They've got 2 more years, and anything after that is, I don't know, we'll see mode.
It might. I don't know if it would change your immediate plans, but I think after this upcoming year, it would certainly change the way you were going to approach it if you knew that Steph was only going to be here for 2 more years.
Grandy, what are you doing in 5 minutes? What do you got? What are you doing?
Oh, we're going to hear from Warriors general manager Mike Dunleavy. If you missed the whole thing, well, not every second of it,
the whole thing.
All the important stuff. If you missed it, you'll hear it.
Okay. The best of the game with Grandy. Here it comes, and he's going to start off with the important comments from Warriors general manager Mike Dunleavy in the exit press conference. That is all brought to you by Fremont Bank. Full service banking, no compromises. You want to do it again tomorrow?
Yeah, we'll give you one more this week.
We'll do one more. For Dibs, for Grandy, for Lucas, I'm Mark. Shoot your shot. That's all you got.
Interviews, topics, and sounds of the day.
Hey, everybody.
On 95.7 The Game.
Happy Thursday. Welcome to Best of the Game here on 95.7 The Game. It's Mark Randy with you as always from 6 to 7 here on Best of. And if you are new to Best of the Game, you're going to be hearing a lot more of it over the next handful of months because without the Golden State Warriors anymore, 6 to 7 here on 95.7 The Game is generally speaking pretty free. So a lot of Best of the Game coming at you here on 95.7 The Game, where we recap the best 60 minutes that was here on 95.7 The Game throughout the day. And today, it is relatively simple. If you were listening to Steiny and Guru earlier today, Warriors general manager Mike Dunleavy Jr. addressing the media from Chase Center for his exit interview. A number of Warriors players, including Klay Thompson and Andrew Wiggins and Jonathan Kuminga and Chris Paul, they did their exit interviews from Chase Center yesterday. It was Mike Dunleavy and Steve Kerr who addressed the media from Chase Center today. And talk about a challenging first couple of years and really first full year as a GM for Mike Dunleavy. He takes over for Bob Myers, who steps down after last season and has to deal with the fallout of Draymond Green and Jordan Poole, ultimately trades Jordan Poole and brings Chris Paul in, who many Warrior fans had felt as mortal enemies with Warriors players for a number of years, back when he was with the Clippers, then with the Rockets, and so on and so forth. And then this season, he had, and I guess even last season as well, in addition to that trade, he also had to decide whether or not to re-sign Draymond Green. He did that. And now fast forward to the present day where he has to deal with more questions this offseason and really more fork in the road offseason for the Warriors. You have a decision to make about Klay Thompson, but beyond that, more generally speaking, you've got a decision whether you want to run it back with the group that's won you 4 championships, or if you want to start anew. Start with, Steph Curry and Draymond Green, and then deal with everything else on a case-by-case basis. It's been a challenging 12 months for Mike Dunleavy Jr., general manager of the Golden State Warriors. For that reason, his conversation with the media at Chase Center today, very interesting and eye-opening. He talked for nearly 30 minutes. I did cut it down just a little bit. I picked what I thought was the most important, the most intriguing stuff. So this is 22 minutes of Mike Dunleavy addressing the media at Chase Center. Everything you're gonna want to hear and know from Mike Dunleavy earlier today. You heard it earlier on Steiny and Goo, but now you hear it again here on Best of the Game. Here is the Warriors general manager. It's Mike Dunleavy Jr. here on 95.7 The Game.
Steph and Draymond and Steve have been, vocal about wanting to bring Klay back, wanting to keep that core together. How possible is it for you to build a championship team around them if they do stay intact?
Well, considering they won 4 before, I would say it's well within the realm of reasonability. But we gotta, certainly we want Klay back first and foremost. I expressed that to him yesterday. I think our players have expressed that, our coaches, front office, ownership. Look, everybody wants Klay back. He's still a really good player. And I think we have enough good players in our system. We have enough assets to acquire good players, and we have the ability to keep getting better. So given that, as long as those guys are still really good, I think we can contend and compete, but we just unequivocally have to improve.
How much will financials come into play this summer, and how reasonable is it to improve the roster, make the moves you want? Well, I mean, I guess do you guys want to duck the luxury tax entirely?
The financials will always come into it. It's part of the puzzle. I wouldn't say we're at a point now where we're saying we got to be out of the tax or we got to be under a certain apron or anything like that. We're going to look at everything. I think if you've got a team that you feel can contend for a championship, you do what it takes financially. So we'll look at everything. We'll balance it out. And it's hard to say right now in terms of what it's going to look like and all that, because this is April. This stuff goes into June and July. But you know how Joe is with his willingness to spend and compete, that I don't think there'll be any restrictions, but we'll also be prudent. I mean, to put a team out there that can't make the playoffs, like we spent $400 million this year, I wouldn't recommend that. So we'll we'll figure it out, but I don't think we have anything set in stone in terms of parameters we got to live by.
Do you feel, you mentioned expressing to Clay that you want him back yesterday. Do you feel like that's likely? Do you feel like, reciprocal, or do you think this is going to be like potentially a thorny negotiation?
No, I think it's a mutual feeling. The guy's been here a long time. He means so much to the organization. We really, really value him. And so there's nothing that would make me think that he wants to go somewhere else or we don't want him back. And for that reason, I'm hopeful we can make it happen. But, it's a deal. Both sides got to be good with it. And, we'll work through that. But I think, hopeful, I'm optimistic I am about it.
Mike, this season was kind of the microcosm of the Draymond Green experience. Can't live with him at times. Can't win without him. What is your feeling of certainty that he's part of this going forward? And how do you navigate that if sometimes he's just not available to you? Yeah,
I think, in terms of having him back, I think very, very high likelihood. I can't imagine a scenario where he's not back. Could be wrong, but man, he's signed up under contract. We value him. He's a core piece of what we do. So fully expect him to be back. I think we won over 60% of the games he played in this year. So you know how meaningful he is to winning, and he'll continue to do so. As far as the other stuff, part of it, I think, is managing him, Steph, and Clay as they age. These are long seasons. These guys have been through a lot. So we've got to manage the emotional, the mental, the physical stress and the fatigue these guys take on. And that'll be a part of the process moving forward. But I think Draymond, I think he's in a great place mentally, just evaluating and observing him over the season after the suspension. I think he's learned from it. I think he's better. And we'll continue to work on that stuff and have it on top of mind. But I think we're in a really good place with him and excited to have him back.
How would you assess this season for Jonathan? And then being that he's extension eligible this summer, how do you see his future here in Golden State?
Yeah, I think really good growth out of JK. Frankly, put a ton of time in this past off season, came in, had a great preseason and got off to a little bit of slow start, but found his way. And was, had a stretch there in the middle of the season, was, not only one of the best players on our team, but in the league. And that's where we see the potential with him. And like with him and our other young guys, vitally important that these guys take another step because, that's how we're going to balance this thing out with, our more mature legacy players with, a younger core group that can push us forward and help us win. And like Moses, JK, those guys are extension eligible. Once, we'll get down the road with that, but unequivocally, we value them. We want them here. So we'll see how that goes.
Mike, earlier you said you have the assets to acquire good players, and Joe's never been afraid to take big swings, whether they're from Durant to the reports of the inquiry in LeBron, whatever. I realize you can't talk about specific players, but how realistic, given the position you're in, given your roster, how realistic is it to take a big swing to add a marquee player? Yeah, I think the premise of getting better, that's what we got to look at for sure. So that'll be taken into consideration. We also got to be mindful of the player, who it is, the age of the player, the skill set of the player. It's all got to fit to be able to put the chips on the table to make a move. So those are the things we'll kind of look at and evaluate. But there's multiple ways to get better, and that's certainly one of them.
Moses has had a kind of a strange first few years from a rotation standpoint. Every time it looks like he's broken through DMPs. As he enters year 4, as you rebuild the roster this summer, is there a desire to kind of clear the path for him a little bit from a rotation standpoint, or figure out his future, get it more settled than it has been?
Yeah, I think the good and bad of the situation with Moses is first, he's improved, he's gotten a lot better. And on top of it, I think any issues with him playing, frankly, as a result of our depth, which is also a good thing. But in the end, you're right. He hasn't probably played as much as we'd like, and there hasn't been a clear enough path. So that'll be something we'll look at. I think it's really important coming into year 4 for him that there is some reasonable playing time available for him where he can impact our team and be out there and continue to improve. And I think that's a fair thing.
Mike, you've seen 83 games now, knowing what you lack, knowing how the West is stacked up. In hindsight, could you have improved this team at the deadline? Was there something that was out there that might have helped, like looking back on it?
I think knowing what I know now, there's not anything on the table that I would have done or gone through with. I think it was good to see this team out. I think one of the best things about this year, frankly, is there are no catastrophic injuries. There's no, hey, Steph only played 40 games. What would this team be like without him? Thing like that. We know clearly what this team was. It wasn't good enough. And so there's no doubt about that. There's no what ifs. If we had made a move at the deadline, well, maybe that wasn't the right move. What if we had kept this guy or that guy? We answered all those questions. And so now we can move forward with clarity. And, but going back on it, no, I feel good about this team. We really put a lot into it before the season started and a lot of thought. I thought it could play multiple ways, pretty versatile defensively, offensively. Did we do those throughout the year? No, but to be able to see that out after the deadline, I thought was important. That's what the feedback I got from the players, the coaching staff. And frankly, we were 27-12, the last half of the season. So I'm good with how, we went after the deadline. Just don't like maybe the earlier part of the season that got us too far behind and we couldn't make up.
Mike, kind of, I guess, following up on that, then moving into this offseason, what do you think your biggest roster needs are? What did you guys really lack this season?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's like I said, we got to get better in a lot of areas, but the ones that I think immediately jump off the page is, defensively, we got to be better. This is an organization, a team that when we've been really good and won championships, it's been mostly with defense. And then you got some great, exciting offensive moments that everybody thinks about, but it's really the defense has been the core of the thing. So, improving defensively within, getting better defensive players. And then from there, I think as Steph and Draymond and Clay, those guys, kind of age, shooting's important. Shooting's important in this league. It's important to have guys that can shoot around them. So I think addressing that will always be a thing. But I think there's and honestly, size, and not necessarily at the center position, but positional size across the board, which has been a strong point of the teams here. Whether it's shooting guards, wings, small forwards, whatever it is, always had good size and length. So like to always keep that in mind and address that. But those are probably the biggest areas that I'm thinking about right now.
And you mentioned shooting. How much this season there wasn't like a consistent secondary scorer that you could consistently rely on? Do you think that was an issue kind of throughout the year?
Yeah, sure. I think so. I think a lot fell on Steph's shoulders. I think he would probably tell you that, and you could notice it in the wear it took on him. In fact, really with some of his decision making at times too, and it's just a lot for him to burden. And we've got to find a way to help him out in that. And frankly, I think we've got some talent on the roster that can do that. And maybe we got to just be a little bit better about bringing that out. And so maybe there's some improvements from externally, but I think we have some ways internally to do that.
Steve said something the other night that kind of stuck out. He said that he needs to be better, specifically talking about the offense, getting the offense into more rhythm and more flow. How do you think he was over the course of this season? Obviously, off the court stuff was one thing, but on the court, how do you think that went?
Yeah, I think it went well. I mean, I think hopefully that shows in the contract extension we gave him. And I think if there's anything I look back on and think about and question is I think we built this team with a lot of depth in mind because some of our players on the roster are older. We've had some injuries. So you want to be able to survive those types of things. And frankly, we had great health this year. And because of it, it kind of created a logjam with minutes and rotations. And maybe that made it difficult on Steve and the coaching staff at times. Had to look back at it, evaluate it. Not sure that the answer is to go the other way and have more of a pecking order and less depth, because if you get hurt, you're in trouble. But, I thought overall, Steve had another really good year, but, I think we've almost in some ways, not to take away from the basketball part, but we value him and the way he can manage a team throughout the season and hold a team together. I mean, man, we had some tough stuff go on, and this, like I said, this group never wavered.
When you talk about what you just said, this team never wavered. They were healthy all season long. And you mentioned size is needed. And you said not necessarily at the center position. When you're going up against guys like Sabonis, AD, Jokic in the Western Conference, is size not a remedy? Size inside at the center position, not a remedy for the troubles defensively that you kind of mentioned there? And I have a follow-up after.
Yeah, I mean, look, that helps if you have the type of size that can combat those specific players who are like all NBA Hall of Fame players. To me, the worst thing you can do is try and just bring in a tall guy and say, hey, go guard Jokic. And that's not the answer. So we try and beat it with speed, with quickness, with smarts, those types of things. And it's been pretty successful here. But overall, like, yeah, if we can find somebody that's 7'3" and like highly skilled and can play both ends of the floor, like, sign me up. But those guys aren't really growing on trees.
That is true. The follow-up being that the league is getting younger.
Yeah.
And obviously guys like JK really helped you guys to speed up the game. Is there any emphasis on getting some more athleticism, younger, quicker guys to help to build around, of course, Steph?
Yeah, for sure. I think in this modern NBA, the game is played so fast, and we got to be able to play that way. We struggled this year in transition both ways. Defensively, couldn't get back, which is a speed, athleticism, effort thing. And then going the other way, we didn't create a lot of turnovers, and we're unable to get out in transition and use our athleticism with Wiggs and JK, GP, those guys. So we got to solve that. We got to be better both ways in transition. And we'll look to do that. Like I said before, not only like free agency and draft and trades, but like, can our guys that we have now be better at that? And I think it's doable.
Just overall, assessing the landscape of the West, how close do you feel like you guys are to closing that gap with some of the top teams?
Yeah, I think we still got really good players. We've got good young players. For me, we're closer to the top than we are the bottom, even though we finished 10th in the standings. That's kind of the way I see it. But, that can change. Next year will be tough. The teams that didn't make the playoffs this year, you're looking at the outside in with Houston, Memphis, San Antonio. I don't see a way for those teams to get worse. They're only going to get better. So this is a tough conference, and this is why we got to improve. We got to get a lot better too.
Mike, Kuminga and Moses obviously made significant steps of progress this year, but you also got big contributions from Brandon and Trace. Overall, how encouraged are you by that young core that you have on the roster?
Yeah, I think we're excited about it. To have 4 young players that we think can really play. A little of it now is finding how it all works together and getting them the appropriate time and making sure that they can properly impact winning. But I feel a lot better about that group and just our overall direction of the team sitting here today than I did a year ago. And a lot of that's frankly because of the, having Brandon and Trace, a couple more players that make sense.
How would you assess your ability to make whatever tough decision you have to make coming up here? Is this difficult for you, or do you feel like your decades in the NBA and around NBA life makes it a little bit easier to pull a trigger on something that is probably going to be difficult to do?
Yeah, I think I probably operate off the saying there's never a bad time to make a good decision. So doesn't mean it's not tough and you stir over it, but my job is to have the best interest of this franchise and the direction of this franchise. And when I make a decision or we make a decision. So that's what I'm going to do.
Chris has a very flexible contract situation, and you guys have also expressed maybe wanting him back. How do you view his future? And then just how do the financials of it all kind of complicate that?
Yeah. I think overall, I was really pleased with Chris having him on this team this year. What he gave us in the locker room, on the court, off the court. I think admittedly he probably wished he had a larger role and could help the team a little bit more. But I think moving forward, because of his production and the guy can still do it and what he means to winning and all that stuff, we certainly have interest in bringing him back. But like the puzzle stuff, we got to look at and figure out and see. And there's definitely a viable path to do that, but we're not really down the road yet of like specifically what we can and can't do.
Mike, you referenced being closer to the top than the bottom of the West. And certainly that makes sense when you look at the second half, 27-12. It doesn't make sense when you look at the other night. Right. As Steve said, you guys are kind of overwhelmed physically. Was that sort of jarring to see the way, not just that you lost, but the way you lost? And how does that sort of color your view going into the offseason?
Yeah, honestly, not a lot. I don't take that game into consideration too much. I just the worst game we played all year. Give credit to Sacramento. They did a great job. But, I watched this team for 82 games. I mean, the amount of times that we've been ran off the court, very few. I think there were a couple home games in January. Obviously the Boston game where that was a different scenario, but that was a game last night where I think or the other night where you got to be careful of like overreacting to how it went. I don't think that represented our team on the whole for the season. But that being said, it kind of put the stamp on what the reality of this year was. So here we are. And I would say going into that game, whether win or lose, no matter how it happened, I knew we had to get better.
Steve said earlier this season, actually, that they needed to really kind of get the best out of the athletic guys like Wiggins and JK and Gary. And obviously, Wiggins missed a few games and JK came along. Gary missed a bunch of games here and there. How do you look at especially Gary and Wiggins and what they can give you going forward, given the situation that they're in?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are the type of players you need on both ends. They can defend. They can do stuff offensively. They can finish at the rim. They have the athleticism. So we need those types of guys, and we need to bring the most out of their talent. That's really important. And I thought there were times this year where, they struggled individually. And then but I think of it as like a two-way street where we got to be better at helping them. And I think those are guys that if we're talking about helping Steph and taking the load off him, those are guys moving forward that can do that offensively. And we got to find ways to do that.
We didn't get to talk to Steph yesterday, but what was your message to him in the end of season exit interview, and what did he want to get across to you?
I don't think there was any two-way messaging. It was just a discussion, dialogue of how the season went, what we need to do to get better, where he's at, hearing from him after 83 games and being 36 years old, where he's at. And I think he's in a really good place. And I think he's a player we'll continue to lean on both with his leadership and his play. And man, that guy's as resilient as they come. My biggest thing was I'm disappointed for Draymond, our veteran guys, as well as our younger guys, that you won't be able to play in the postseason. Like that's what everybody wants to see, not only here in the Bay Area, but frankly around the world, to see those guys compete at the highest level. So for them not to be able to do that, it's really disappointing. I feel for them, but it is what it is. It's our own undoing, and we got to live with it.
And then in terms of, you mentioned some internal options of, possibly taking some burden off of him. How much of that needs to come with a scheme change rather than players developing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good question. Maybe a little bit more pointed to Steve, but I think that's something that he'll look at and be open to. I thought we did some stuff this year that changed differently from what we have done in the past to help those guys, and I think we can do more of it. But yeah, I mean, I think that's something we'll look at, and I think everything's on the table in terms of how we play, how we want to do things. When you have a couple of years, we've missed the playoffs 3 of the last 5 years, so it's fair to evaluate and make changes to things.
Actually, as a follow-up to kind of what you just said there, to just summarize the emotion in the front office right now, giving what you said about the consideration of the last game and how they lost, what you've said about having the pieces here, is there an overarching emotion that something has to change in this offseason for next season, or something drastic, or no?
Yeah, I mean, I think the overarching emotion right now is disappointment. We're still sort of, settling in on what happened. But on the whole, we knew this season, no matter how long it went along, was going to end at some point, probably disappointing us. And so not a shocking surprise. But I think as far as, again, what we need to do it's pretty straightforward. It's to get better. And I think that presents a really good challenge for everybody, whether it's the players, the front office, the coaches, the performance staff, like everybody rowing in the same direction and figuring it out.
Yeah, I just wanted to get kind of more clarity on the financial aspect of the equation, because, wanting to get better, but also at this point, it sounded like you guys need to trim salary. How do you decide, well, this is worth paying this amount because we're going to be a playoff team, whereas like you just paid $400 million not for a playoff team? Like I guess take me through the mindset with the money right now and how needed it is to trim regardless of the moves available.
Yeah, I think the way we'll look at it is seeing what we can do, what's out there, seeing what we project of the guys we have on our roster, how they can improve, talking through it with, Steve and what he's looking to do to change things, and really getting a hard look at like, okay, this is where we can be. And then to go to Joe with my recommendation of what the appropriate spend is on all that. That's what it's going to come down to. And frankly, that's probably not going to happen next week or next month. It's like a lot of this stuff leads up to the draft and right up to the bell of free agency. So there may not be a lot of, conclusions and solutions in the short term, but that's what we'll lead up to.
All right, that's Mike Dunleavy, Warriors general manager, earlier today addressing the media at Chase Center. A lot of really interesting things there from Mike Dunleavy. You heard Willard and Dibbs reacting to it. Before that, you heard Steiny and Goo. I'm sure you will hear the Morning Roast, Bonte and Shasky, reacting to that tomorrow because there is a ton there. Trust me. If you want to hear the whole thing in its entirety, I had to take a few pieces out. If you want to hear the full thing, make sure you visit our YouTube page, youtube.com/957. The game is available for you there. Or you can also find it wherever you get your podcasts. Just make sure you search under the Steiny and Guru umbrella because it did air during the Steiny and Guru show, and you'll be able to find it there. All right, time for a break here on Best of the Game. More on the Warriors coming up on the other side as we continue on this Thursday right here on 95.7 The Game.
It's the 6 o'clock shop. Head to Safeway this week for amazing member deals. Signature Farms Chicken Picnic Pack, drumsticks, thighs, or leg quarters. Buy one, get one. Red seedless grapes for $1.88 per pound. Visit Safeway.com for more details. And see you in the aisles.
These are the days we look forward to, folks. Clear roads, blue skies, and the mountain is all yours. Hop in your Toyota and I'll meet you up here because it's going to be a stellar day. I'm Johnny Mosley, and this is your Thursday Toyota Tahoe Report.
Thanks, Johnny. High pressure continues to build over the region through the weekend and into early next week. This is expected to bring milder temperatures, highs into the upper 50s for the lower elevations and 40s for the higher elevations. This report has been brought to you by your local Toyota dealers. Toyota. Let's go places.
Do you have neuropathy? Are you experiencing numbness, tingling, and pain that just won't stop? Are you taking dangerous drugs that have serious side effects and never fix the pain? If so, please listen to this message. Neuropathy is a serious progressive condition that only gets worse if not treated properly. Call SF Bay Wellness at 844-94-NERVE to get back to doing the things you want to do. There is no drug, exercise, or surgery that can heal nerves. Don't wait until your condition gets worse and stops you from living your life fully. SF Bay Wellness has a time-tested, proven track record of helping hundreds of patients. If you're ready to regain your independence, contact SF Bay Wellness at 844-94-NERVE. Call now to find out how to reverse your neuropathy for just $99 and receive a personal treatment plan that is tailored to your needs. Call 844-946-3783. That's 844-946-3783 and start to enjoy life again.
Want more speed? Well, Xfinity just increased their internet speeds, and they're faster than ever. It's time to get more out of your internet with faster speeds from Xfinity. Now through June 21st, get 150 megabit Xfinity internet for only $19.99 a month for 12 months with a 1-year contract. That's double the speed for the same great price. Click, call, or visit a store today. Requires paperless billing and auto pay with store bank account. Restrictions apply. Equipment, taxes, and other charges extra. After promo, regular rates apply. Actual speeds vary.
The following is an attorney advertisement. If you get sidelined by a workplace injury, the workers' compensation attorneys at Boxer & Gerson can help get you back in the game. Our team of skilled attorneys will fight by your side for the treatment and compensation you deserve. We care about justice for injured workers. That's what makes us Northern California's premier workers' comp law firm. Call Boxer & Gerson at 510-345-2341 or visit boxerlaw.com for a free consultation. Boxer & Gerson, your life is worth the fight.
Now it's time for the closer of the week. Presented by LiftMaster and R&S Doors. Turn your garage into the envy of the neighborhood. Visit rnsdoors.com.
This week's closer comes from Nathan from Oakland. We called R&S Doors to repair a damaged main garage door at a condominium complex in San Leandro after receiving tenant reports about the door not functioning. R&S sent Lupe and Juan Carlos, who figured out the problem and repaired the issue.
Recently, my garage door opener was not working. I was in need of a closer. I was put in touch with R&S Doors and they
hooked me up with a brand new garage door opener from LiftMaster. With LiftMaster's MyQ connectivity, my garage door opener can be controlled right from my smartphone. You'll know when a door or gate has been left open and can close it with a tap, no matter where I am. Be one of the first 10 callers and receive 20% off a LiftMaster garage door opener.
Call 1-800-FIX-A-DOOR. That's 800-FIX-A-DOOR. Or visit rsdoors.com. R&S Doors. Look for the red truck.
Visit Shane Company for uniquely designed jewelry crafted with the greatest care. Timeless Mother's Day gifts to remind her of your love. It's Mom's Day to shine. Shane Company. Fine jewelry since 1929.
Hi, I'm Henry Winkler. My eyes are very important to me. My eyes connect me with everything I love. I loved my late father-in-law dearly. He always lit up a room, but his vision dimmed with age. He had age-related macular degeneration, or AMD. And since partnering with Apellis, I've learned there's an advanced form of dry AMD called geographic atrophy, or GA. His struggle with vision loss made me want to help others know about GA's warning signs. For some, colors appear dull or washed out. For others, hazy or blurred vision make it hard to see details, like fine print on price tags. Many have trouble seeing in the dark, making driving at night difficult. GA gets worse over time and cannot be reversed. If you think you have GA, don't wait. Treatments are available. Ask a retina specialist about FDA-approved treatments for GA and go to GAWon'tWait.com.
It's a mystery where Old Spice finds its amazing scents like Himalayan sea salt, but I'm thrilled they have because no other body wash exfoliates and moisturizes 24/7 like Old Spice Gentleman's Himalayan sea salt body wash. Now, if only there was a mountain range separating the Indian subcontinent from the Tibetan plateau where I could hide my Old Spice and keep my family from stealing it, my impossibly smooth skin will finally be safe.
Look around. You can find cars like these on AutoTrader, like that car riding your tail. Or if you're tailgating right now, all those cars doubling as kitchens and living rooms are on AutoTrader too. Are you working out and listening to this ad at the same time? Well, multitasking pro, cars like the ones in the gym parking lot are for sale on AutoTrader. New cars, used cars, electric cars, maybe even flying cars. Okay, no flying cars, but as soon as they get invented, they'll be on AutoTrader. Just you wait. AutoTrader.
Now, back to the best of the game on 95.7 The Game.
Welcome back. It's best of the game here on 95.7 The Game. Mark Randy with you as we continue to react, as we did all day here on 95.7, to what Mike Dunleavy Jr., Warriors general manager, had to say at his exit interview from Chase Center earlier today. You just heard it. You heard it earlier in the day with Steiny and Guru as well. If you missed it, you just got in your car, you want to hear it again, it's available for you in a number of different places. Wherever you get your podcast, look under the Steiny and Guru umbrella. You can also visit our YouTube channel, youtube.com/957 The Game. You can download the free Odyssey app. It's up there for you as well. A lot of ways to get the 95.7 The Game content wherever you do consume it. It's available for you in every possible place you could think of in that regard. All right. With all these conversations, the end of the Warriors season, and they're at a crossroads, and what decision are they going to make? Are they going to re-sign Klay Thompson? Are they going to try to shed some salary and get under the tax entirely? Just the second apron, the first apron? What do all these terms even mean? What flexibility do the Warriors have? You throw around so many names of stars. Maybe the Warriors can go and get this guy, and can they have room for another $35 million contract? What are they going to do with Chris Paul's $30 million contract? All of these questions, it gets so difficult to answer at times because the NBA's rules and regulations and the penalties for being over the cap and all of that, first of all, it's kind of new. The league has added and made the penalty for being over the cap years in a row. They've made it much more difficult for organizations and teams to swallow. So what does it all mean? And what flexibility, if any, do the Warriors even have? Those are really difficult questions at times to answer unless you have Bobby Marks on your radio station, and that's what Willard and Dibbs had earlier today. Bobby Marks is ESPN's NBA front office insider. If you're looking for an expert in all things NBA salary cap, he's the guy to go to, and he was kind enough to join Willard and Dibbs earlier today for a really good conversation about the Warriors' flexibility, again, or lack thereof, this offseason. What moves can they possibly make? Will it be difficult to bring everybody back, even if the Warriors want to do that? What does it all look like? That conversation with Willard and Dibbs earlier today. Here is ESPN's NBA front office insider. It is the great Bobby Marks.
First question right off the bat. How viable are the Warriors in terms of acquiring a big name should he become available?
Well, I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's a matter of where you are salary-wise. This is different than years before. This is different than combining two salaries and going out and get a $45 million player or a $50 million player. Where they are right now, it's not viable. Where they are right now, from now until June 30th, it's not viable. You're basically kind of in a frozen transaction period. Where you ended the season with your finances, these new apron rules that started on Monday, the inability to take back more money, the inability to aggregate contracts, meaning combining salary. So if you wanted to go out and get a $48 million player, you wouldn't be able to combine Andrew Wiggins and Draymond Green, for example, here. So for now, you're kind of in a holding pattern until you figure out what you're going to do with Chris Paul and what the price tag, if the goal is to bring back Klay Thompson, is. And then you can start figuring out as far as, where your salaries are, through some of the restrictions that are really strict right now, start to loosen and everything right now. But yeah, I mean, you've got, from a draft equity standpoint, you've got, you can trade your first round pick starting the night of the draft. So you can move 25 and 27 or 26 and 28. You can also move that pick that's owed to the Wizards that you can move that's in the, if it's in the top 20 here. So from an equity standpoint, you've got pieces. It's just a matter of loosening, some of those restrictions. And I think that's a big reason why, Joe Lacob has been on the record saying that there basically has to be some type of budget here.
And the budget has to come to pass before June 30th in order to get below the apron and have that flexibility the way I'm reading it. And how much does the Chris Paul contract play into that? Is there a way that contract could be used as a resource in a trade by guaranteeing it and finding somebody to take it on?
Well, you can, sure. I mean, that's what happened last year with Phoenix when they wound up moving Chris. His contract at the time was only partially guaranteed, and they wound up getting Bradley Beal in the deal. You could do that. I think it's just a matter of is ownership in the front office willing to absorb more salary? If you're moving $30 million, are you willing to take back a $30 million guy that's guaranteed? I think that's the kind of the unknown right now, because if you just waive Chris, you have the flexibility to get under the luxury tax or get under the either apron, even if you bring back Klay.
Bobby, how much is Klay Thompson worth on the open market?
I think he's, I heard somebody say the non-tax mid-level. I was like, wait a minute. I was like, I know he was bad the other night in Sacramento, and I think that's the shame of it all. He wasn't good in Sacramento, and I thought he had been really good up into that point, kind of since the All-Star break here. I still think he's a $25-30 million player. I really do. Is he a 3 year for 3 years? Probably not. But if the Magic fall, I'm going to just give an example. If the Magic fall short and, they need shooting desperately, would you pay Klay 2 for 60, 2 for, 50, somewhere in that range? And I think he's still, a north of $20 million guy.
Can the Warriors afford him at that price point that you're laying out? If it's 2 and 50 even, can Joe Lacob afford to bring him in and still stay below either apron, let alone the tax number?
Yes, they can, because if you take Chris off, that gets you down to about 141. You add 25 million there, that gets you 166. The apron's like 177. You could still add a couple minimum guys here. So it is certainly doable as far as, and that gives you, as I said, some of those restrictions that you have right now begin to get lifted, and it gives you the more flexibility to go out and do another deal if you wanted to.
Bobby Marks, ESPN, with us here on Willard and Dibs. Bobby, let's go back to what you were saying about how for right now you cannot combine two salaries to get a bigger salary. So how and when could they? So in other words, when they were able to get to a point to get into a conversation about acquiring a bigger player, how in dumbed down terms can they go about doing that?
July 1st. That's when basically the clock resets as far as where you are financially. July 1st is a date to circle, and I think certainly Chris's contract gets guaranteed on June 28th. So you'll know by the end of June as far as where Golden State will be going into free agency as far as from a flexibility standpoint.
When you look at assets they possibly could package at that point, how is Andrew Wiggins viewed around the league at 26.2 next year?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a rich contract. There were moments when he was pretty good, and then there was moments like the Sacramento games, and there were probably more moments like that this season. 3 years at whatever $75 million, for example. What's left is a rich number, but it's a matter of okay, what else is coming back with that? Right? Is there another player? Is there a young player? Is there draft picks here? Every team needs a $20 to $25 million player to put in a deal if the goal is to go out and get a $35, $40 million guy. So it's more of a I don't want to say trade asset, but it's a trade component that a team could use. The value of it as far as on the court is probably not where it was, certainly from 2 years ago.
Bobby, this is the one I think a lot of Warrior fans struggle with, especially, and this is an extension of that Wiggins conversation. If the Warriors get to a spot where they can get into a conversation about a big name player, do they have the assets that another team would want without including Jonathan Kuminga?
Well, I mean, it's a matter of, yes. I mean, you got Podziemski, you've got Moody, and you've got draft picks. And Trace Jackson-Davis, right? Those are take Kuminga out of the equation. So what are those three? Draft equity, and then you add that big contract there. So I certainly think so. I think that from the young player's perspective, you do. I don't think you have to put Kuminga in. I mean, it's just a matter of kind of who that player is, who's available.
When you look at the aprons, the various aprons, and Joe Lacob has been very adamant about trying to get out of that second apron, what's the big punishment that lies in the future for Golden State if they continue to be a second apron violator?
Yeah, so what will happen is if you finish next season over the second apron, your first round pick in 2032 gets frozen. Okay, so what that means is that you won't be able to use that in a trade. If you're in the apron, basically 3 years in a row, so you're starting with the 24-25 season, your draft pick in the seventh year, so all the way out, will get moved from wherever it is to the back of the first round. So let's say, 7 or 8 years from now, Golden State's got the first pick in the draft. Well, that all of a sudden becomes the 30th pick in the draft because you've been over the apron for 3 years in a row.
Bobby, let's talk about Chris Paul specifically for a second because I know this one is a little bit intricate. Can you explain to our audience what exactly the Warriors can do with that contract other than, as you said, obviously just waiving him? Yeah, I mean,
in any other probably season, I think it's a trade asset here. What you can't do is because it's not guaranteed, you can't trade Chris Paul out right now and take back a $30 million player because you're basically sending out zero as far as in salary because there's no protection to it here. So it's a matter, and this comes down to ownership. How much is ownership willing to kind of absorb if there is a player out there that they can go get? And if it's not Andrew Wiggins, if it's Chris Paul, and now you're adding draft picks, and you're adding your young players here, that's a big trade asset here. But there's certainly a big cost to guaranteeing that. There's a cost to running back the same group. And I said that before the Sacramento game, I thought you could have made an argument that hey, based on how they played at the end of the year, and 10-2 and 27-12 in the last 39, like, really good on the road. But since Sacramento, now it's like, okay, now who's going to be the odd man out? And I do think it's going to be Chris, unless, as I said, ownership is willing to take back more money, and take back more money means another player, and also bring back Klay Thompson.
From a practical standpoint, is there even a suitor out there that would want Chris Paul at $30 million to give up their $30 million asset?
Probably not, unless you're getting something back, something good. We saw it last year. We didn't. There was the likelihood that Chris was going to get waived in Phoenix, and then all of a sudden Bradley Beal becomes available. But the difference was last year you were able to combine salaries. This year you're not. So that makes it a little bit more challenging. So if there was a $50 million guy out there, to go out and put him and Wiggins together, the likelihood is that you still exceed that second apron, and that won't be allowed.
Interesting. Bobby Marks with us, ESPN here, Willard and Dibbs, 95.7 The Game. Bobby, I wanted to follow up on your comment about, yes, the Warriors can afford Klay Thompson at $25 million per year. Can they afford Klay Thompson and also find a way to trade for a younger, big-name player?
No, they can't. They can't, because basically what will happen is Klay would replace, if you waived Chris, would replace that. You're basically right at the luxury tax. You sign Klay and you move Chris and you take back a $30 million player. The likelihood is that you're going to be deep in the tax. You're going to be in the apron, and that's something as you guys know, ownership has pretty much said no to, unless hey, things change. I mean, things are pretty fluid. We don't know who that next disgruntled player will be. But as I said, the challenge as far as going out and you basically got to go dollar for dollar on every trade, certainly presents a challenge.
So then let's take the Warriors at their word, because they've all said in the last 48 hours they want to keep Klay. Yeah. When you hear them say that, what does that mean to you as far as their roster reconstruction?
I think what it says is that they want to keep him, but there's a price to keep him at. And they're probably not willing to go back over a price. I think listen, there's, you've got Moody and Brandon as kind of fallbacks if things don't work. And eventually, and I know you got, Curry on 2 more years and Green's got 3 more years. Eventually, you're probably going to have to rip the Band-Aid off this. And if he's step one to doing that, the challenge comes with, if Curry was in the last year of his deal, then you could say, well, maybe you do it one more, run it back 1 more year and stuff. Steph's got 2 more years left, and you still want to put a competitive roster, and it's a matter of kind of having faith in those 2 young players that you can do it. As I said, if the price is too steep to bring him back.
When you talk about ripping the Band-Aid off, when that actually happens and Jonathan Kuminga is still here, what does that extension look like? He's going into his last year of a team option at 7.6. If he gets extended this offseason, how much do you think he gets and for how long?
Well, rookie extensions are the most challenging ones out there because, Kuminga and his agent aren't competing against anybody. There's nobody with cap space. It's really just the day before the regular season starts. Basically, Golden State's got all the leverage until next offseason. So I always thought, rookie extensions, my good friend Brian Windhorst always says it's kind of like the fun extensions, right? Like you're basically buying upside. It's a stock. You're hoping that player can take 2 steps and he can become an all-star. I think his number is probably in that 5 for 130 range. I don't think he's a max player, which would be 5 for 225 or 5 for 225. But I do think he's probably a probably $25 to $30 million player. Because I do think the upside is there to be a top starter / all-star type player in the league.
All right, Bobby, let's stop messing around. What's up with Lauri Markkanen? What's going on here?
Well, he's renegotiation eligible in Utah. They can't do it until early August. It's going to be interesting as far as what approach Utah has taken. Danny Ainge went on the record the other day and said, we're willing to go big game hunting this offseason, which is rare because that team basically has punted the last 2 trade deadlines here. So he's in the last year of his contract. Certainly, if he does not renegotiate or even extend, certainly that's a guy to kind of circle.
Any chance that Warriors dream of a LeBron James taking the minimum, comes to Golden State, Bobby, fans here, we're delusional about Giannis. We dream about LeBron. Well, maybe LeBron will his son will get drafted here in the second round, and he'll want to take the minimum.
He might play for free.
Pick 52, circle that right there, right?
Yeah.
52 or 53. Listen, this is the beauty of the playoffs is that teams that lose, it changes like what your plan was for the offseason, because someone's not going to be happy. Someone's going to be asked to be traded. Someone's going to opt out of their contract. Someone wants to go play somewhere else here. And that's why I think we just sit back and wait, see what happens in the first round, see what happens in the second round. And then all of a sudden come early June, there's going to be one guy not happy, two guys not happy. And then all of a sudden you try to figure out how you can go out and get him.
I mean, some names, Bobby, even just possibilities. Like what?
I'm interested to see what happens with the Clippers, right? Like, Paul George has been eligible for an extension since last June. Kawhi Leonard signed one. What happens if the Clips lose in the first round?
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. But then it comes back to the challenges of kind of getting your finances in order and being able to have the ability to go out and get a guy like that if he did become available.
Is Minnesota one to watch too, with Edwards' contract exploding next year and the Cat and Gobert already making north of 40 for next year?
Yeah, I mean they're deep in the second apron. I think it's interesting what happens with that ownership. What gets resolved there as far as who's going to be in charge. Do they have to slash money? Phoenix is not an easy first round series, certainly for them. McDaniel's extension kicks in. Edwards' extension kicks in. They are deep, a team that's never paid the luxury tax. This is kind of rare territory. And what happens if they lose in the first round?
Bobby, this is all great stuff. What if we just pull back from these specifics and ask you this? What, with the finances as they are and the names as they are, in your opinion, what are the chances that the Warriors find a way to compete at a high level next year?
Well, here's the thing. 46 wins, I know not by Golden State standards and not by their own fan standards and where they were. Like, it's basically like you're 3 or 4. You're Draymond Green suspension away from being the 4 seed. I mean, that's the reality of it, or the 3 seed, because how good they were on the road and how good they were in the second half, and I think that's the struggle you have, right? Like you're not like a rip it down and build it back up. Your 46 wins. I mean, tomorrow night New Orleans wins 49 games and could be sitting home just with second most wins in franchise history, can be with Golden State. So the West is brutal. Taking 2 steps back in the West will set you back for a long term. So I don't think this is a tear down thing. I do think you can compete in the Western Conference, but it's going to have to make, it's going to make some hard financial decisions and probably a big step in development with your young players.
Now, that's ESPN's Bobby Marks. He's, in my opinion, the NBA's foremost salary cap expert, and he shed a lot of light on the Warriors' flexibility, or really lack thereof, until late June, early July, when the Warriors have the ability to actually make some moves and move some money around, say no to Chris Paul's contract. That's not an option. It's just fully non-guaranteed. They could say no and waive him by the end, close to the end of the month of June. They would owe him no money. That would take $30 million off the books. And then free agency opens, of course, early July, and that's when things can begin to take shape. But the Warriors, as it stands right now, 2 days after their season has ended and 2 days before the beginning of the NBA postseason, the Warriors have very, very little flexibility at this stage. But the good news is you don't have a ton of stuff that is too pressing right now at this very moment. If you are the Golden State Warriors, you're getting ready for the draft, and you could trade draft picks, but we'll see how it all plays out for the Warriors. There's plenty of time, but a very good conversation there with Bobby Marks on Willard and Dibs. All right, that'll do it for Best of the Game today. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. as always on a Friday to continue talking Dubs and where they go from here. This is Mark Randy signing off. Thanks so much for tuning in, and have a great rest of your Thursday.
Another happy SafeLight customer.
SafeLight Repair, SafeLight Replace. There I was, driving down the highway, and a rock flies up and cracks my windshield. Are you kidding me? I asked for recommendations, and everyone sang the same thing. Safe Light Repairs.